Hello and welcome back to the DP World Tour Picks and Bets 2023 edition. Skylar, Hoke is here once again. Tom Jacobs is joining me from across the pond. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's really good to see you. I know you've been not globe tropping. I suppose it's all been in the States, but you've been state hopping, busy, keeping well by the looks of things, which is always nice to see. So back to DP World Tour golf after what feels like a pretty extended break, which it has been.
Yeah, no, it was needed, right? I think we all needed a reset button, and I enjoyed the fall. I enjoyed the last time we were together. We have to, rack the memory a little bit. I had a tough 2022, Tom. It wasn't easy. We had a lot of close winners. In the first event of the new season, Dan Bradbury comes through after being one of our ones to watch on the betting card, 200 plus to 1. That was, that puts you in a great spot to start the year. I feel, you're in a free roll position, and it was great to kind of get some education on the newer guys that are now having tour cards. But we jump right into a Rolex Series event too. So we have a strong field and just excited to get back going.
Yeah, I think it's just ironic, isn't it, that we couldn't find a winner on the show, and then the one time we take a week off, you pick the guy, and it is what it is. But people should have kind of listened to what you said about him on the show and seen your betting card that week and put two and two together. So hopefully some people told you there. But I just think back, this at least brings back the good memories of Thomas Peters winning for us.
Yep.
And I don't know how many times after that we won. It might have been once or twice.
We lived the leaderboard all year. Just getting winners is hard. We know that.
Especially on this tour. I think because it's got so much weaker. Before, you could kind of pick out I don't want to go into the discussion of why it's got weaker, but you could kind of pick out 5-6 players, right? And then all of a sudden, kind of Foxes and the Smiths and people like that came to the fore, but they weren't necessarily high grade winners until Fox won a bit of a run. So it kind of became a little bit harder to predict. And I think that'll be the case again this year as we get used to some new faces climbing to the top. But certainly for this event, we kind of know these players, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we had last week our first return, I guess, to golf in some way for the DP World Tour side with the Hero Cup Continental, Europe beating Great Britain and Ireland. I don't know if I would say a dominating fashion, but never really looked like kind of your neck of the woods had a chance there as Guido was just too good all week long, earning 3.5 points, shared leader of the top scorer. But it was good to get our guys back in action and see that as, of course, it is a Ryder Cup year, right? So we have a lot to play for some of these guys. One, and imagine we see probably the biggest shakeup from a previous team to a new team than we ever have before, right? And a lot of these guys we talk in week in and week out and that we got to see last week are going to be fighting for some spots.
So my one concern with the Hero Cup was you think about, obviously you've got Rory, Rahm and Victor, and Lowry, I guess, that are Rory, Rahm and Victor are the staples of the team, right? And then you go to the Hero Cup and the Great Britain Island team have the other staples, which are Fleetwood, Lowry, and Hatton, and they lose.
Yeah.
And you think, is that a positive in the sense that there's at least some new blood coming through? Or are we concerned that Molinari shuts out Lowry 3 and 2? At least Fleetwood and Hatton did win their singles, but that was against Peters and Rosner. Is it a worry for Europe, or is it a positive that there's a little bit, deeper stuff, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, you can probably put it on argument on each side, right? I mean, 2 golfers in the field this week that are PGA Tour winners in the past year didn't have good weeks, right? And Seamus Power and Sepp Straka. And even when you look at the odds, how I kind of traditionally had bet, if I'm seeing Power at 33s, you're seeing Straka at 50, it's you got to really think about that, right? And
I really wanted to back Straka. The first number I saw at 50 is you've got to bet Straka. He's just we always see it with the PGA Tour guys dropping down to the DP World Tour, and it is a drop down. They just play well, but when you look at, like you said, what Straka did last week, it's a little bit of a concern. But I think to me, I don't know, I just can't work out. I don't know if it's just not worth reading into. Is it just not at the level it needs to be for it to be? I guess there's some players that could have done their chances a bit of good, and there's going to be some that maybe just quickly go out of contention. Does Jordan Smith just go out of Ryder Cup contention pretty quickly? Or, do we look at Guidos and the Nikolai Højgaards and the people like that this is a really positive. I don't know. I guess it just wasn't a big enough stage for me to get too excited about it, but good for this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's definitely a good amount of my card actually played last week and kind of talk some reasoning as we go in. So I think it's a good time to transition right into kind of the week. And I'll make sure I also say, as we start up the year, ratings and reviews go a long way for us, right? We're kicking off another season. It's our third year together, right, Tom? It's crazy.
It is.
It's crazy. We spent this much time kind of going through that. We're going to have to get together at some point. We're worlds apart, but we have this connected to us. So
it's only a plane ride away, Sky, isn't it? I mean, what's the plane these days?
I'll see you in Rome, Tom. This is what it's all leading up for. If we have a big year,
especially if Guido gets on the team.
We get Pat hit us some winners with us. Maybe we just get a little Mayo Media Network get together in Rome. But yes, you can find us on the YouTube page, Mayo Media Network. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us comments for that. And then on the audio side, daily fantasy sports picks and bets, the mix. You can find us on there. Again, that'll be uploaded. This is Mondays. We normally record on Monday afternoons, and that will be out for you in the evenings. So we appreciate all of the listeners who've gone. I'm sure they're excited as well to be back here in the DP World Tour season. So again, we really appreciate you guys, and we're ready to ride.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely exciting. And Pat does a great job of kind of telling people about us on his show and things like that. And there should be some new guys come in. I know we sort of got some tweets today sort of saying what's the best DP World Tour. I got tagged in a couple of our show, which is nice to see. And that there are still people that just haven't really got used to betting on this tour yet. So I still think at the moment this is a perceived value. You can become a little bit of watered down in terms of PJ content. There's so much of it out there, and a lot of it is so good that it's hard to stand out. But there's still fairly limited amounts of DP World Tour coverage. So it's always nice to be kind of flying the flag for this tour.
Yep, and DraftKings is having 5K to first for the first event of the DP World Tour season. So there is some daily fantasy action too. So always good to have that. But yeah, let's just dive right on into the event. So we have the Abu Dhabi HSBC Championship. It's going to be played at the Yas Links. So last year was the first time Yas Links had been played. Kyle Phillips designed. Thomas Peters was the winner. I believe at 10 under was the score. It looked like it could be kind of overwhelmed on the opening Thursday where people played quite well, but the scoring average last year on Friday alone in round 2 was 75.5. Basically, I guess it's kind of like a Middle Eastern links-ish type of course where if conditions are up, it is going to be impossible. If we do not see the wind in which we got last year, people can take advantage, right? So we've seen that at links courses over the last couple of years. I wouldn't necessarily say just because Thomas Peters won, it's a bomber type of course, right?
Yeah.
Varying skill sets across the leaderboard last year. Any takes on the course for you?
Yeah, I think you covered it well. My main point was going to be if the wind doesn't get up, we should see an easier renewal, right? I think that's really important to kind of flag that. It is like a links course. Dunhill links can get tough if the weather's bad, right? And Kyle Phillips, I think, is responsible for Kings Barnes as well, which is one of the 3 courses at Dunhill links. He was responsible for the Dutch Open course, which we'll come into a little bit later on. He's done some stuff, and it kind of you look like you said, Peters beat Shubhankar Sharma. Sharma's he can hit it a decent way, but he's not renowned as this big bomber, right? I mean, Bello was back in the day, but isn't really now. Jeff Winter's not, Dubuisson's not, Poulter and Morrison certainly aren't. Morrison's probably one of the shortest players remaining on the tour, and he was in the top 6. So I think it's a pretty balanced skill set in terms of what you need to be successful here. I guess if the weather is down, the bombers maybe do come to the fore, but you just think about good links players. I was thinking about this before, when they say about good links players, it's always a category of he's going to be really good when the wind gets up. But just as important as that is being good on links when the scoring is low as well. Being able to shoot at 62, 63 in calm conditions is just as important as being able to shoot at 68, 69 in tough conditions, right? So I think you kind of got to find that balance, which I think we will do between our picks. I found it really hard, and I haven't in the end made a pick between, Tommy Fleetwood's there at 12 to 1 with Tyrrell Hatton at the same price, Shane Lowry 14s, Alex Noren 20s, and Thomas Peters 25s. I couldn't find one that I liked amongst those. I think they all make good claims, and if I hadn't seen Alex Noren part of the Dunghill Links, I probably would have gone there, given the form that he's shown on the PGA Tour and DP World Tour of late. But yeah, I couldn't go there in the end at the top of the range.
Yeah. Again, for new listeners for us, you often do see our cards starting in the 20s, if not 30s. Most weeks we like to get some each way value, or at least each way opportunity with our guys when we are betting. If we are laying a flag, planting a flag at somebody on the leaderboard, or high up at the odds board, it's somebody that we're very confident in, and I'm not with any of these guys. Like you mentioned off the top, they weren't all that sharp in the Euro Cup last week, right? Now they have had some sustained success, obviously, over time, and deserve, and they are very strong links players, all of them, with a lot of success on it. But I am definitely still reaching down a little bit. I think the next two people on the odds boards are the two that we are interested in. The numbers, as we talk, are getting cut on some of them, even as they're popular selections, and no surprise. So I'll let you go first with yours.
Yeah, so for me, Minwoo Lee is a player that, you put up a decent amount last season, right? We talked about an awful lot. He got a bit of coverage on here, and I just looked at it, like, it was kind of my last pick, which is strange being from the top of the board. But like, I wanted one nearer the top, and I deliberated for a long time whether it was going to be Noren or whether it was going to be one a bit further down. I mentioned that I wanted to back Sepp Straka, but had the concerns from last week. Minwoo Lee, just a really strong finish to 2022. Last 6 events of the calendar year, never finished outside the top 12. That 12 came at the DP World Tour Championship. He was second going into the final round of the Open d'Espagne. He was a 36-hole leader at Valderrama, 9th at Nedbank, and then he went home to Australia and posted back-to-back top 4s, which you would expect in that kind of strength of field, right? Like, it's not a massive positive, but it's just good that he sharpened his irons just before the end of the year, as you like. And you look at his 2 wins, Victoria Open and Scottish Open, both kind of wind affected links type golf courses. Didn't play great here last year, finished 35th, but his final round 67 was one of the best of the day. It was actually only bettered by 2 players, as Adrian Aus and Henrik Stenson shot 65. So to me, I think, like, is he twice less likely to win than Fleetwood and Hatton? Like, I don't think so. Like, have they got 2 times better chances than him? But I just don't think there's that much of a gap between them and the top now. And we've seen Fleetwood obviously come back to a bit of form. That was a really messy sentence, but like, my point is that, like, I don't think there's much of a gap between Minwoo Lee and the top. Yeah,
I mean, and it's just kind of the conversation of math versus feel versus eye test, and some of these golfers that I have a tough time really thinking of anybody that holds a DP World Tour car as some type of a consistent DP World Tour player that is like a prolific winner, right? You know what I mean? Like, who I am fearful of every single time Sunday comes around and they're sniffing the leaderboard, right? And that's not these guys here, for me at least. At this point, you don't have. I mean, how fearful were you, when Scheffler was on the leaderboard middle of summer last year, or Rahm sniffing around, or Rory, of course. Like, even though the odds can be similar, and mathematically they're the same ways, it's just not the same killer instinct, I feel like, in some of these golfers that we get to have, which provides the opportunity to get on guys a little bit deeper down the odds board and cranks up the variance week in and week out. I'm trailing right down the board. There was 33s that were open, just available. Minwoo Lee is 28 on DraftKings Sportsbook. That's the best number out there. The one that was 33s as we opened the show is now becoming a popular selection down in the 28, and I'm still fine with that, is our friend Robert McIntyre. We were hard on Bob, I think, last year, and I think it was fair. I think it was very fair 100%. As he has been priced in a position where his pedigree just didn't line up with, his performance just didn't line up with, right? It just really was something where he was consistently 28s to 40 in stronger fields than this, and was not playing at a position in which he deserved to be at those numbers, in my opinion. And that really switched when he won at the Ryder Cup venue at the Italian Open, right? And it was people were on, I believe. It was popular, somewhat of a popular selection, a little bit maybe even where the odds had trickled out more than they had after people had caught up with how inconsistent the game was. But he goes out from there and he has 5 consecutive top 20 performances. Very hard on himself as he really lost his game in the final 2 events. He was very disappointed at the DP World Tour Championship. But although his team was the losing team last week, you could probably make an argument that Bob McIntyre was one of the more impressive golfers last week, and somebody who has performed well on links courses, who, when the condition gets up, I do agree that he's somebody that I trust a ton, but he has definitely scored in low courses too. He has a very strong overall game, and he mentioned it vocally last week, saying, how positive he felt about his game, from an all-around tee to green standpoint. So the 28s, the 33s, if I'm looking at somebody who's going to be what Fox was last year, what Jordan Smith was last year, in that next level up, Bob still has a couple levels to go, and that level is what I think we all think he has in him, and that's somebody who's competing with the best in the world. And last week was a glimmer of that, and I think he's got a huge year ahead of him. So I will take the plunge here at 28-1.
Yeah, and the thing I like about him, he's got a 3rd and an 8th that advises a Classic. He's got a 4th place finish at the DP World Tour Championship in the past, and a 9th place finish at Ras Al Khaimah as well. So he does just generally play well in the Middle East, it was just a huge positive. He played well at the other Ras Al Khaimah event as well, just didn't hold on to the final round. And even some of those Tour Championship efforts that he's had already were actually better than he kind of finished off right. Like, he just didn't close it out. Yes, he did finish the season slightly poorly. I do think the links thing a little bit is overplayed with him, but that's not the reason you're picking him, which is not for you. Like, you're talking about him as an encompassing player. Like, if people are just going, it's a links event, let's pick Robert McIntyre, be concerned. But I think when you're considering everything, it's absolutely fine. And I think that he will. Like, he has to, right? Like, he has to kick on. If he doesn't, then questions are raised. But we've seen this guy finish, top 12 at the Masters. Like, it's an important year for him.
Yes, 100%. I think this year is probably as big as ever with a Ryder Cup year for him. I think falling short of making that team is a big disappointment and what he has ahead of him. So I would be on with you there. Get that mid-range following next here, where we haven't really mentioned there are live golfers that are in this event. Patrick Reed is another golfer there at 33. You have the tour golfers, right, with Seamus Power and Sepp Straka finding in this range. Fox is in here, Meronk. Rasmus Højgaard is playing this week. Did we have awareness of why Nikolai subbed in? Was it an illness or an injury? I think Rasmus is fine and okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I was surprised. I didn't really pick up on that, so I don't know. I just saw that Nikolai was playing. I just thought maybe Rasmus just didn't play.
They subbed out like a week before.
Yeah, and I don't know. We often talk about this. Like, there's a discrepancy between the two players' prices, right? Like, I did give Rasmus a glance at the start, and I thought, 35-1 is not too bad. And then you looked at Nikolai, which I'm sure we'll come on to in a bit, like at 70-1. I don't know that the difference between the two players in terms of winning upside. I think one of them, Rasmus is quite clearly the most consistent, and that they're protecting themselves against the each way value. But in terms of winning upside, that Nikolai's not far behind.
No, not at all. So I'll go right into my next selection. That's just a little bit down the board, and it's Victor Perez. We had 4 golfers, and I'm just not going to deny, like, I love people that knock the rust off in a really good way in this part of the country. Not at I would say a similar golf course, but it's not all that different, right? We've seen a lot of translation in type of location form, I would say, and Victor Perez was one of the more impressive golfers. Him and Guido went 2-0-1 together just last week. But, that's a feather in the cap of which the pedigree in which, Perez walks into this event. 2-time DP World Tour winner, one of them being at the Alfred Dunhill Links. You mentioned off the top, Kingsbarn is a Kyle Phillips design. I believe one of his other wins is on Kyle Phillips too, or he has other.
Yes, he won when he came back and won a Dutch Open last year. Yes. That was the Kyle Phillips Bernardus course, I think it's called. Yeah. And he won there, so beat Ryan Fox and Adrian Meronk. So it was a good result.
Yeah, so you look at that build up. You look at the type of game he has, right? I think he's all around. I think he's deserving of being maybe priced even near the 40-1 range. Some of these guys, and you're still seeing 55s out there for Victor Perez. Just when he's at his peak, and just like last week, he's one of the better, if not top 5 ball strikers in the DP World Tour, and I will go to war with that every single time.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one. Like, I think I'm going to join you on him purely because when I think about it, he's won on that Carl Phillips design. He's won on one of the 3 courses at the Dunhill Links, which is a Carl Phillips design. He's got a 4th place finish at the Saudi International, which is Paspalum Greens, which they are this week.
He probably should have won that event too. He was
he was right in the mix, if I remember. And like, I think it just depends. Like, you have to look at what you think Victor Perez is. Like, he's finished 2nd in this event before. Like, he shot a final round 63 to climb leaderboard. Last year, he was 4th after round 1 and 10th after round 2. So started the event really strongly, but I don't think his game was as bulletproof as it was back in the day, because he was out of form. And now he's kind of got that kind of belief back. I think that's really, really important. So to me, Victor Perez, who last time we saw him, I think he was 12th at the DP World Tour Championship. Yep. I'm pretty sure he ended it with a 66 as well. So, like, yeah, I think everything lines up for Perez. And I was debating kind of this range of Straka, Perez, Molinari, Otegi. Like, there was some people there, and I think Perez is the one. So he would be my 2nd pick with you as well.
Yep. I can 100% get behind there. I think it is mentally, just kind of fighting that belief with Power and Straka. I wouldn't be surprised if any of them, right? Those 2 really get into the mix this week, especially Seth being a winner on a bigger stage and also making a run at it at the Tour Championship. 2, you're talking about year motivation. You talk about how Bob McIntyre mattered a ton to him about getting on to the Ryder Cup team. You could probably say the biggest person who is, I don't know, it's hard to judge mental opportunity or mental, kind of narrative street. But Francesco Molinari, like you mentioned, is somebody who is jonesing to be on that Ryder Cup team in Rome after what him and Tommy Fleetwood did. It's just something that if I didn't see what I saw last week, I'd be willing to be like, all right, it's fine. It's fine. And he was probably the last one that I put on the card. And, we like to mention our friends kind of across the industry, and Ben Coley is on him. I recommend always kind of listening and following. And I'm Ben, one of our good friends at Ben Coley Golf. And he kind of mentioned the number in which, Molinari is available, I think in the States still at 60s as of this. And it wasn't that long ago where he had heated up at the Italian Open, and he was 22-1 in a field which had Rory, Hovland, Hatton, and Fitzpatrick. And now you come here at a weaker field compared to that, more than double the number, yet Hatton is 12s, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we're starting to see these flashes with Molinari too, right?
He shot 64 in Mexico, didn't he, to open?
Yeah, and what? He was 15th at the Open, then he was top 10 at the BMW PGA, right? Those are the best 2 events of the season. He was pretty decent at the Alfred Dunhill. At the RSM, he had really good approach numbers when he played out there. And last week, he was exceptional. He shared that top point earner. So that to me is just enough to have a speculative to start the season when you don't really have form out of a lot of people. You're trying to play into what you think could be. I have a tough time leaving Molinari off the card, especially with the number he is.
Yeah, so my only concern with Molinari is he just doesn't play the Middle East, very much at all. Like, he hasn't played this event for, I think it's 8 years. Which, some of it is the fact that he moved over to America recently, but even before that, he just didn't play it, and I wondered why. When you look, he's got a couple of 8th place finishes here, so it's not like he's poor at the event, right? I just wonder if he just doesn't want to start his season that early or whatever. Whereas this time he kind of had the Hero Cup captain duties, if you like. And like you say, he's definitely as motivated as anyone. And I'm pretty sure strokes gained going off on someone on Twitter because someone basically said that he had family troubles or something. And Molinari said, "I'd love to hear what these family problems are. You just concentrate on you and whatever." I don't know the exact translation, but. He wasn't happy about that. So I think there's certainly a fire bubbling under Francesco Molinari at the moment to get back to I think the problem with Molinari is like people think he sucks now because he's not the player he was in 2018? Was it 2018 when he won the Open?
It's when he won the Open, yep.
And then 2019 when he obviously contended for the Masters. Like that was career best not out of nowhere, but like certainly a different level to what he was before, right? Whereas like if you think about what he was up until 2018, like he's not really deviated too much from that. It's just he kind of peaked 2018, 2019. It's hard to kind of keep up with that. Like he won 2 PGA Tour events in between those 2 years. He won the Open Championship. He contended at the Masters. Like it was just a hot run of form that probably wasn't sustainable, really.
Yeah, for sure. So to see the step back, basically, it was just a violent swing on both sides. Where, but I mean, he there's enough there, in my opinion, to the number to. I would kick myself more not being on than looking at the opportunity to start the year when you're trying to thread the needle. So does it still keep on me when we're looking at our cards? I'm trying to double check.
Yeah, next to you would be the Danish man that we've already mentioned, and then it'll be on to me.
Yeah, so we talked about it from the top, right? You mentioned we went through Rasmus trying to figure out there. Nikolai was exceptional at the Hero Cup, and Nikolai was very good in the lead-up event prior. He was in Australia, right, when Morank won. He was, I believe,
he finished 10th at the Australian Open.
Right, the Australian Open, right? So 10th there, and we know the wild swings in which his season can bring, right? He won an event sandwiched between 7 missed cuts, I believe it was. Where was that event? It was in this area of the world, so I do have some solace there with it. I just think, when I think of Nikolai and I think of the upside, there's just really sky high, right? Like, I mean, it's his 5 starts in this area of the world are miscut, win, miscut, fourth. He teased it up against the best last week, and him and Molinari earned themselves 3.5 points each. He was, I believe, 7 under through 16 holes yesterday when he played in the Hero Cup. And he's not somebody I think you can really predict. He might be somebody that I just need to commit to, like, for a stretch of time, right? And not be phased off of anything. Now, the way Peters won last year is more maybe the way that you could see Nikolai winning with the driver. Now, if things don't pan out the way from a course standpoint, that's the fear with him, right? Like, he does pretty much have a single angle in, and that can be scary. But no, he wasn't 6 under through 7. I believe he was 7 under through 18, going head to head with Seamus Power, multiple eagles on his card yesterday. That's a big win, right?
Yeah.
That's the most prolific guy that's probably on there from PGA Tour standpoint, of course. And trying to get, over here, I guess I wouldn't say prolific if you stand him up against Fleetwood and like Hatton and Lowry, but a big name guy, Nikolai, going out and beating him. Finishing as well as he did. I think it's huge momentum, and I love the number. It's still 70s out there, right? I think that's the thing. It's a 70-1 shot on somebody who we know can compete with the best in the world.
14th at Dunhill Links as well. I don't know exactly what he scored on Kings Barnes, but I'm assuming it was pretty good to get to that number. If it wasn't, then maybe that's a factor. But to me, like, I'm trying to think of the best comp for him on like the PGA Tour for people that are listening, maybe that are new. I'm guessing like someone like a Siwoo Kim, like just always seems to be
a Cam Champ even, right?
Yeah. Maybe Champ's probably better because he's so volatile, whereas Kim does have a little bit of consistency. I'm just thinking of a player that like has winning upside, but value always seems to be there. Like Siwoo Kim was 50-1 last week. And this is a guy that's won like 4 times on the PGA Tour, and he's won the Players Championship. So Nikolai strikes me as that type of player that a couple of good results in a row, like you can probably forget him, but like when he's this kind of 50, 70, 90, 100, whatever price, like you should probably just buy it because like his like you say, his volatility is so good for winning upside. Yep, absolutely.
All right, enough of my selections. I'm passing it to you. Next one on your list.
So I love Adrian House. He was actually the first person on my card. I already mentioned that he shot that final round 65 here last year, which was the best of the day. That led to a 20th place finish in total. But he's played in the Middle East 13 times, like in the last kind of 15 events that have been played in the Middle East. 6 top 9 finishes, all of the last 4 have been 9th place. So if you can bet on him to finish 9th, then just do that. But his most recent was at the DP World Tour Championship, where he was second, where he was 9th, and he was, he was playing pretty well up until that point. He was second going into the final round of the Ras Al Khaimah Classic before that, but finished 9th after a poor final round. But since then, he's obviously a winner. Hasn't probably kicked on as much as we hoped he would after that first win. I think people kind of, again, it's what people expect, right? Like people just like, oh, he's won the first one, so now like hatfuls will come, and it just doesn't work like that for basically 90% of the tour, like probably 95% of the tour. Like there's only certain people that win once and then just kick right on. He's got a flawless record in this event, four starts, 4 made cuts. He had one really poor round really last year. He shot a 76 in the final round, which when you said like the scoring average was like 75, it's really not that bad. He just didn't take advantage on the first day, shot a 70. So to me, like I think there's just a lot of upside on Arnaus. Like he plays well in kind of links conditions as well. We've seen that in the past with Arnaus. So to me, I think starting up a year again, he's probably someone that hasn't been talked about for the Ryder Cup. And I probably wouldn't put him in that category, but like it is possible. And he was third at the Saudi International, again, Paz Palam Greens, big event. And to me, there's definitely some stuff to like about Adrian Alson. I'm going to play him at, is he 75 to 1 now on DraftKings Sportsbook?
Let me double check here.
I think it's 75 to 1 DraftKings and 80 somewhere else.
Yeah. Yep. That is correct.
Cool.
So yeah, solid numbers there. So many of these guys can leap into a different echelon this year, right? And I guess we probably could have said that last year about some of these guys, and they did, right? Audrey got his first W. Like it's the start of it. Bob got a win, like a true win under his belt like that. There's just still another level up. These guys can keep going or sustain and kind of see it from there. What's the start of the year? I think we can we can like explain. If we have anyone that's new that's listening, we can walk through a little story time. So I fell in love with the DP World Tour. Probably I'm trying to think of the exact year. 5 years ago.
2017 maybe?
Right. We're a little bit younger in our golf fandom overall, right? And something that I have just been obsessed with kind of my whole life is statistics and numbers and diving into, the why behind things, telling yourself a story. And that's really what began my interest in the DP World Tour is after I got so statistical and interest in the PGA Tour, doing rolling stats, finding, short-term form versus what was the traditional old form prior to all these sites that were really out here, right? Living in Excel and kind of learning this stuff. When the DP World Tour first came out with strokes gained statistics, that was kind of my leap into following this tour. You can bet on it like anything else. There's zero difference in betting on the DP World Tour, the PGA Tour, anything, right? Like that's one of my favorite things out there. Of course, you can win 100K every week playing DraftKings for PGA, and you might not be able to on the DP World Tour side. But every time a golf event happens, it doesn't matter where it is or who's playing or what it is. The odds are still the same across a relative perspective of this. So learning on the DP World Tour, there was statistically one golfer that stood out in my research every single time. And his name is Guido Migliozzi. I mentioned him a few times off the top, right? And Guido, when we look at, and this is 2019 when they first rolled out these strokes gained statistics. There were some in 18 and then fully in 2019. Their caddies were scribbling and they would be doing the math afterwards. And Guido, we love ball strikers, right? We absolutely love ball strikers. And Guido was week in and week out a prolific, and I'm not kidding, he would be leading the field in strokes gained ball striking, and he wouldn't even sniff a made cut. Wouldn't even sniff it. He was losing 7-8 strokes on the greens in 2 rounds. It was awful. And after the first round in Kenya in 2019, Guido was in the mix, and he finally was able to be positive on the greens. And, we had been following this guy. We had then jumped on and bet him there. Comes in an electric win in Kenya. A month and a half later, wins a Belgian knockout. And he is winning at deep, deep odds, right? And then he's top 10ing some random events, the Porsche European Open, having in the mix. And he was somebody that his approach numbers that year were the best I've ever seen on the DP World Tour. And that is being truthful from the numbers that were at least being spit out kind of that year. Now things have advanced. Guido's game has advanced. But the numbers really don't change when it comes from the odds. And you still have opportunity. And I believe, just like he did last year, right, Guido won out of nowhere in France with the round. That was the round of the season. Without a doubt, I think that final round in France was a round of the season. And he is somebody that I've committed to backing, especially when the number is like 66 and beyond. Always backing Guido, because I truly believe he can beat and contend with anybody in the world because of his upside and the way his game's evolved. I mean, he was fourth in the 2021 U.S. Open. People forget that. Like, he was on the back nine in a major, getting publicity. It's like he was there in the mix of it. So, I mean, he was top 20 this past year in it, top 15. So Guido Migliozzi was exceptional last week in the Hero Cup, gaining 3.5 points, being one of the better players, was -6 through 16 holes just yesterday when he was closing out another match there. He's 100-1 out here. I'm absolutely backing Guido after the good vibes.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, right? Like, that final shot in France even was probably one of the best, like, of the season, right? Like, it was unbelievable. He just has that. He kind of has that X factor that you like, and people get excited about him. He's kind of this young, fresh-faced kid that actually looks younger than he even is, and he is young. And I think there is upside, and he'll be motivated to get into the Ryder Cup team as much as anybody as well. So, yeah, it's a tough one. Like, he's never played well in this event, is my only concern, but that doesn't mean that he can't. And as you said, like, statistically speaking, he stands out quite often. So, definitely one to keep an eye on, I think. And as you've already said, like, the prices don't move too much, so like, well, they only go one way really, they go out. So keep an eye on him and just keep persevering with him with it.
And I really don't think like that is, especially on some of the peripheral tours, like a bad strategy if you are very high on a golfer. And like we mentioned with Nicolai Højgaard, he's probably somebody that you could just literally trust enough that you bet every week and you set aside an allocation, and he's going to return some profits for you, right? Yeah. You just hope it happens on the weeks where the number's bigger. It's no different than what people thought with Tony Finau, right? Like, you just trusted for that moment to come against the best of the best, and it finally did. Like, so that's just kind of that blind faith that I have with Guido there. So that's the fifth selection. I have one more, but we are aligned on this one, so I'm going to let you roll into one of the better names in golf.
Yes, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but Jazz Janewattanond for me he's a golfer that always kind of pops up, like, one, because he's got an incredibly long name and I just have to type in Jazz OWGR because I can't be bothered to type in his surname. But like, he's a guy that can peak. He's played and won in many different, Japan and Asia events and things like that. Hasn't yet broken through on the DP World Tour, which I guess I don't know if that's a concern or not. I mean, he's only 27. It's not like he's old, right? So, I mean, looking between 2017 and 2022, he's won 10 times, or 8 times across 2 tours.
Won a few weeks ago too, didn't he?
Yeah, and the most recent thing that caught my eye is the fact that he won this International Series Morocco event, which is basically the kind of feeder thing to the Live Tour, right? Yeah. And there was some decent players. David Puig was playing in it, and a bunch of other guys. And to me, like, that was enough to kind of catch my eye. Like, anytime you look at recent form and there's a 1 next to someone, you kind of want to dive a little bit further, right? And then when I looked into it, just even further than that, like, his most recent start was a 6th at the Indonesian Masters, which he plays well in before, and that's always good. And when you look, he was 6th at the Mallorca Open. He was 6th after every round. He was 14th at the Andalusia Masters, where he first round led at the Valderrama course there, which is obviously tough. So 14th, 6th, and 61st for his last 3 starts on the DP World Tour. Then he finishes 1st and 6th on the Asian Tour. To me, like, that's kind of great form for somebody in the triple digits, right? He's got a top 10 at that Carl Phillips designed Bernardaus Dutch Open event. He's also been 31st there in the past, and 2 of his wins in Asia have come on Paspalum greens as well. So for me, there was just so much to like about Jazz Janewattanond at a big price. And as I said to you earlier in kind of messages, when I get like this on a long shot, it tends to go wrong. Normally someone like a Paul Waring or an Oliver Wilson or someone like that, but it's Jazz Janewattanond this time.
Hey, I like it. He had stood out too from that recent form. He probably, I'd have to do the numbers I want to see. He might have played the most golf of anybody this past year. He played 37 times in 2022. Like, Sung Jae hold his beer, right? Like, come on, like that is an impressive amount of events he played, and there's a lot of strong finishes. I mean, we were introduced to Jazz at an early age in his career, right, where he definitely is still young, and has a lot of opportunity. 130-1 out there. Love the each way with that. That's on DraftKings. So I definitely am in with you on Jazz. That rounds out for me selections. We kind of normally at the end of the show might highlight a guy or two, not spend a ton of time kind of going through the one that because you're all wrapped up too, right?
Yes. Yeah. All done.
The one that I struggle to not be on, no surprise probably to people who have listened for a while, is Sami Välimäki, right? I would think Välimäki had one of the best stretches to end the year, right? He could have walked away with 2 wins. Out of those 4 events that he played, right? He lost to Dan Bradbury, and then I think he had the 54-hole lead and finished 11th, or he was inside the top 3 at least in the last event, and he struggled on that Sunday. So I think Välimäki being out to 130s is pretty decent after seeing what he finished the year on.
Yeah, I think for me there was a couple of players in this kind of 80 to 100 range. So Scott Jameson plays very, very well in this event. Was obviously famously the 54-hole leader here last year. Didn't get the job done. I love to back him, but I just can't do it to myself. Ewan Ferguson, I keep looking at thinking that he's way too big of a price at 110-1. That's every week he's 110-1, and generally seems to prove that 110-1 is right. So I've left it alone. Rafa Carrera-Brelo's got great form in this event. Just can't get him right, so not even going to try to. But to me, the one that I really kind of wanted to put a little bit of a spotlight on, and you like these sort of things, Jung-Hoon Wang was a 3-time winner on the DP World Tour. 2016 he won twice, 2017 he won again. The final one of those was at the Qatar Masters, which is in the Middle East. He was a really, really talented golfer for a strong period of time during that first, run on the DP World Tour. He was second at the Nedbank Golf in between those 3 wins. He was second at the Indian Open, 5th at the Dunhill Links. Obviously, we've talked about Links form being important in the past. He's got an 11th place finish in this event in the past, 6th at the Dubai Desert Classic. It keeps going on and on and on, right? Like he was exceptional. And the only thing that has held him back is he had military service, like he's South Korean, and he dropped off the face of the earth, right? So had to go home and do that. But just in 2022, just to finish, since he's been back playing golf, it's just been some steady sort of finishes. International Series Singapore, 22nd, Korea, 5th, 23rd Morocco, 3rd Egypt. Was 48th at the Fortinet Australian PGA Championship, which I think he was actually playing better at before. I feel like he drifted. He was 4th after the first round.
Yeah.
Hit a poor second round, but bounced back again with a 68 in the final round. So to me, just for a player that had an awful lot of ability before he went away, unfortunately we see these things where they don't come back the same golfer, and that would be the concern. But I just thought he was worth highlighting.
Yep, absolutely. He's somebody who I think I highlighted on kind of long shots to maybe get a tour card, as we know we have the top 10 guys that will be graduating to the PGA Tour next year, having status there. I'll quick run through. Nathan Kimsey was probably the best Challenge Tour graduate in the fall, right? He 48 cuts, 3 of those being in the top 27. Don't let the age fool you. Padraig Harrington finished very strong on the Champions Tour, also top 20 here last year, and has played well in the Middle East. I think he's somebody you could definitely round out some DraftKings lineups. Go ahead.
He's the one if the weather gets bad, like you want, right?
Yep, 100%. It's great to see Alexander Levy back. He's teeing it up. Him and Callum Hill both had a injury-riddled last year. So it's good to have both of those guys back. I think Callum Hill had like Lyme's disease or some type of, I don't think it was like an injury as much as like a disease. So both those guys, it is good to be back for them. And then I am still excited about Bradbury. Winning an event is no joke, right? Winning an event like that in your first DP World Tour start as a member is huge. So who knows? Sky is the limit for him, in my opinion. And he's just back to basically the odds that he won at, right?
Yeah.
So I think he's got some upside. He still made both of his cuts right after winning. Imagine winning, changing your life, then all of a sudden still flying to, another part of the world and being able to tee it up and keep going. Or I think he might have been in South Africa for all of them. But either way, like, it's still a lot to change your life and then just tee it up and go after it. Now he got to level set his head, plan out his year, a lot of things ahead. So I'm excited for those guys. We can round out our cards again one more time here, Tom.
Would he have got into this event without winning that? Would he? No. So I think that the one thing is like
Rolex Series event, right?
Yeah.
Those that don't know, Rolex Series is like the elevated PGA Tour events that they're going to have this season, right? Like these are like double the points, really big for the Ryder Cup year.
Yeah, and I think like to me, like the fact that he's been able to, he's got that win before the calendar year was out. Like he's had the whole winter break to plan his 2023 schedule, pick where he wants to play. Obviously, he's going to play in all these Rolex Series events, but he can now take time off. Whereas, like, if you come into 2023 not having won, you miss all those Middle East events, the Rolex Series ones, at least the next 2 weeks, and all of a sudden you're playing catch up, right? And I think that's a really important thing that people miss. That like these rookies and these lower tier golfers don't have the ability and the choice to pick those spots. So the fact that he's got that is great. So without further ado, I shall round off my card. Minwoo Lee at 28 to 1. I'm joining you at Victor Perez, 50 to 1, I believe he was. Adri Arnaus at 75, 80 to 1, depending on where you look. And Jazz Janawattanond is 130 to 1 on DraftKings Sportsbook.
Perfect. I have Bob McIntyre at 28 to 1, Victor Perez. And I'm going to do each ways of these guys the rest of the way out. So that's top 5 bet you'll see on my card. So Victor Perez, 55 to 1, Francesco Molinari, 60 to 1, Nikolai Højgaard, 70 to 1, Guido Migliozzi, 100 to 1, and Jazz Janawattanond, 130 to 1. Tom, it's great to be back. And it would be better if we can start the year just like it did last year with a winner. Maybe it's our event. Yas Links is our thing, and we can just roll right into 2023 with a W.
That's what I'm hoping. Like, you can't win them all if you don't win the first one, can you?
Yep. Hey, amen. Best of luck, everybody. We appreciate the support, and we're looking forward to another great year together. Take care, everybody.